Welcome to the 2021 Fanfare Launch into Cyberspace. Normally, you'd be visiting the High School of Art and Design's gymnasium, cafeteria, and other spaces around the building to interact and learn about the incredible creations of our young professionals, other creators and innovators in the community. You'd be seeing portfolio reviews. You would be involved in special seminars and workshops. You'd be seeing exciting contests and draw-a-thons. Again, that would have been during a normal school year. The incredible challenges of the pandemic have forced our amazing PTA to take Fanfare and bring it online. So this is our first and hopefully only virtual Fanfare event. And with that said, we still have the vast majority of incredible experiences and learning opportunities for you to be a part of. We're incredibly proud of what our PTA and larger school community have put together and can't wait for you to join us throughout today and the next few days as each one offers unique and special events. Be safe, be well, most importantly, enjoy yourselves and be part of our community.
All right, thanks, guys. And this next panel is super exciting. It's called the small page versus the big screen, where you can spend your initial career focused on the static page and then years later wind up moving to animation or even directing your first full-length animated movie. What are the challenges of such a move? And if you could do it over again, what would you look out for? So come and talk with us. We've got our student moderators. We've got Daniel, Maud, and also Chloe. Thanks, guys. And now you guys can take it away. Enjoy.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right. So,
I guess I'll start with questions, I guess. Okay, when you guys came out of college, what was your dream job and what is your dream job now?
Because I was, so as I was, we were talking a little bit off camera before we began. I was a cartooning major at the School of Visual Arts, so I thought, I thought I would maybe be a comic book artist. Obviously, you could tell by the background of my studio here that I still obviously very much like superheroes and comic books, and just the art of sequential art. I was very lucky that when I went to SVA, the giants, Harvey Kurtzman and Will Eisner were teaching there, and they were my teachers, and so I got this incredible education in this art of sequential art. So I think my dream job would have been working as a comic book artist, but I found I had more of an aptitude for illustration because I could do caricatures. I liked the challenge of illustration. I actually ended up taking some illustration classes and met an art director for a major magazine before I graduated SVA, who gave me an illustration assignment before I graduated school, and that kind of directed me toward becoming an illustrator. And then in that regard, I ended up doing my ultimate other dream job, which for me was Mad Magazine, because I grew up in Mad Magazine, and that was able to combine my love of caricature and sequential art. So I got to work for Mad for many years until Mad kind of ended up dying. My dream job now would be to, now that I'm much more heavily into animation, would be working on a really cool animated show like the Venture Brothers that kind of does satire of superheroes, or an actual superhero show. Like I just finished watching Invincible on Netflix, which I really liked a lot. So something like that would love to eventually get involved in.
Okay, well, I just want to say Ray stole my answer, first of all, because all I ever wanted to do was be the artist on Spider-Man, and so that was my dream. I grew up with the Ditko, Stan Lee, Romita run, and I went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco. They didn't have comic classes, so I took illustration, and it was just figure drawing and painting and design, and it was just none of it I felt went towards comic books, and I wound up getting to do my job. I wound up getting to be the artist on Spider-Man 15, 20 years later in my 30s. So I got to do it, but it went through such a circuitous route. I got an internship my junior year of college at Sega of America doing Sega Genesis games. So I was doing pixel art. And then that turned into a game design job at Atari doing coin-op games, which then led to a job out in Los Angeles doing I got to do some comic book covers, painted. And then that led to a career in animation on the Casper movies and then the Power Rangers. And so it turned out that the job that I got wasn't me doing the traditional pencil and inks of comic books, which is what I thought, but I was never really that good at it. And even my painting just wasn't the style that Marvel was looking for. How I got the job was taking my day job of doing animation, the CGI, and turning it into a comic book. And that's how I got to fulfill my childhood dream. So like absolutely nothing went the way I wanted it to. Nothing went the way I envisioned it to, but I still got to do it. And so I put it into the win category.
You guys mentioned that, so both of you have had experience in working in comics and in magazines and doing illustration. And since this panel is small page to the big screen, what was your experience in working in comics, and how did that lead up into you guys working more in film and more in animation?
Well, the majority of my career spent as an actual illustrator, which was a humorous illustrator because I was able to do caricatures and kind of make it funny. There was this market. Was very different than most of the stuff that I do now in animation. The illustration is a different mindset where it's this challenge of taking maybe a short article or a long article and kind of trying to condense it all into one image that kind of tells the whole story, which is kind of a fantastic challenge. And then as I worked in illustration up until about 2005 as print started to die and illustration jobs started to die off. I started looking around saying, well, I still want to work as an artist. What can I do? Luckily, at the time here in New York City, there were quite a few animation studios and they were looking for storyboard artists. I hadn't done storyboards, but I had the sequential art background from SVA, from Will Eisner's class. And I thought, okay, this is, the nice thing too about storyboards was that it wasn't going to be seen on screen. It could be rough. It could be more energetic. I didn't have to be so tight or on model, which is kind of what a lot of that kept me away from actually doing any real comic book art. And then I was able to start getting storyboard work here in New York, and it just kind of grew from there. So just that knowledge of being able to tell a story sequentially, I was able to apply that from actual sequential art to animation, though there are some key differences that we'll probably get into a little later.
Chloe, I was so riveted by what Ray was saying. I forgot the question. What was it again? You're muted.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. So how did you working in comics, how did that end up with you just working in animation or film? What was the experience?
Oh, yeah. For me, it was backwards. I had to get into animation to get into comics. And so that was the thing is that my illustration background was completely useless. Not completely useless. It was just, there were people who were better at penciling and inking than me. There were people who were better at painting than me. I remember one year Alex Ross's Marvels came out and everybody just said, we don't want that style anymore. We want what Alex Ross is doing. I was like, that's not my style. So really, the animation was what was my hook. It was the thing that set me apart. So I would have never known to take that course. But it was just me following where my career was going, and these were great artistic opportunities. They weren't my dream job, but they were still fun. Working in video games, working in animation is fun, and I was learning new techniques. I was learning new industries, and so it was. I just would have never known that that would have been my way into comics. So I came in at backwards.
That's pretty cool. So I was gonna ask Ray a question, but he kind of answered it. So Scott, as an illustrator, what kind of skills did you use as an illustrator that helped you become like a director, an animator, and like a video game designer as well? What kind of skills did you have to carry over?
Well, in video games, it's funny because even though I was a game designer, everybody used me as an artist. So I was always designing characters. I was always, visualizing backgrounds and everything. But when it came to the movie, I was kind of art directing it as well too. I mean, I think I'm credited as one of the art directors because I wound up. I taught our animation team was in Spain, Valencia, Spain, and I told them I wanted to do the lighting like an N.C. Wyeth painting, and they had no idea who I was talking about. So, and if you guys don't, please do yourself a favor and look up N.C. Wyeth. He was an amazing illustrator. But N.C. Wyeth used to do this wonderful thing with his lighting where he would have, like, if it was Robin Hood, half of Robin Hood's body, his upper body, would be just in shadow, and or he would have the main character in shadow and the rest of the world behind him would be in full sunlight, and it was just, it's still to this day mind-boggling how anybody who could purposely put their characters in shadow when that is your main focus. But he was so good at telling a story and giving you impression that there was something more behind the screen that was casting shadow, that there was mood and light going in, and he would guide your eye with the light. And so I did like a whole art course for a few days with the lighting team on how N.C. Wyeth would light these scenes, and I would do drawings, and I would say, this is how I want to do it. And I think that was really fun, and it's very subtle because it's still a kid's movie, but I really, really enjoyed taking something I learned in college and something that I'd gone and seen as paintings in real life, and applying that to an animated kids film was really fun.
Okay, it's really interesting. I have a specific question for Ray. Ray, how do you manage both the freelancing animation work you do and your job as a professor at SVA?
It's not easy. My classes at SVA were Mondays from the 9 to 12, and then 12 to 3. So my whole Monday was kind of wiped out. Luckily, the last studio I was working at, Late Night Cartoons, which is a new animation studio that was producing our cartoon president, were accommodating, and they let me. I was able to kind of work at home, or on certain days where they needed me, I just came in after school was done. It was a long day, and I would start my day at 4 and kind of work late. How that kind of thing is going to be going forward is anybody's guess. Post-pandemic has kind of reshaped the world, which was, there were obviously a lot of minuses, but there were some interesting pluses about the way we had to do things during the pandemic. So most animation studios in LA would only use people who lived in LA. If you work in California, you have to pay a California state tax. They want you to live there. So that's one of the reasons. So for an animator in New York, it's always hard to get work from one of the LA studios. And now, as there's less and less animation here in New York, and it's booming in LA, short of actually going and living in LA, you're kind of out of luck. I'm a native New Yorker. I like it here. Don't necessarily want to move. Might move someday. Don't know. But I was able to get some freelance working for LA, like LA Titmouse, working on a show on Fox called Bless the Hearts that I was able to storyboard on. And I don't think that would have happened pre-pandemic. So looking for the animation studios might become a little more flexible and allow for these kind of things, to allow somebody to teach, somebody to actually do the freelance. My feeling too is always like, like, tell me what you need and when you need it by, and then just kind of leave it to me to get that done. Because I work best at night. I don't like to get up early. I just want to start working at like 3 p.m, and I'll work all night and get it done. And then, some of the studios, when you were working remotely, wanted you to keep hours so you could have a Zoom meeting. So that was still kind of annoying, but you're able to kind of work with it. So it wasn't easy to teach and work, but it's possible, and there's no predicting how it might be in the future.
Going off on that theme of like working in animation and actually working on that, there's another side to it where it's like, have you guys ever had any ideas that you tried to pitch? Scott, I know that you had a comic that you turned into a film. I think it was called Animal Crackers. And how was the process of pitching that comic, that script, and turning it into a film? And Ray, if you have any ideas that you've tried to pitch, maybe you could add in.
Yeah, it's horrible. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I hate pitching. I'm horrible at it. I don't think I've ever sold anything at a pitch session. Pitching is an art, and you have to be a performer. The Hollywood executives want to be entertained. I always feel like Maximus, are you not entertained? Because I know they're definitely not when I'm in the room. They want personality. They want you to really just kind of sing and dance for them. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for that personality to sell them the story. I've sold probably 8 or 9 projects of my projects. I was never in the room for the ones that sold. It was always an agent or a producer or somebody who said, I know somebody. And I've been in hundreds of meetings. And so again, I've struck out hundreds of times, but the ones where I have sold it was somebody else doing it. So there's got to be somebody. And again, I'm not saying you have to go find somebody, but definitely if it's something that you plan on doing, if you plan on trying to sell it, try to think about it from their point of view. You got to be a car salesman, and you got to say, what do I got to do to get you in this car today? What do I got to do? And so that's the mentality. And most of us artists are introverts. We are not we're not those types of people. And these are extroverts that you're dealing with. These are people who their whole job is to talk to people all day and to just, they have phone meetings. They have meetings just for the heck of it, just to fill up their day. They love it. They have lunch with somebody every day. They have every moment of their day filled up. So understand who you're dealing with. To get my movie made, I had to go and raise the funds myself. And again, I wasn't the one. I had to find somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. And I just had to make the movie myself because there was no way I was going to get a studio to do it. It was just no one was going to take a chance on a first-time writer director. And I think that's been my career. Same thing like going back to Spider-Man. I just wasn't going to get the job. I got rejected every single year from every single editor. And so I had to find a way around where I was able to come at it from a different angle. And coming at it from an animation angle got me the job. And that's been my entire career is there's the traditional way and then there's the Scott way. And that's pretty much how I would say, come up with your own way if you can't do it the traditional way.
Yeah, I haven't been in a position yet to really pitch anything in terms of my own concepts for any kind of shows. When I was still working in print media for Mad Magazine, that was a great environment because you had a script from Mad. But Mad didn't necessarily encourage it, but they liked if the artists added stuff in the backgrounds because there's kind of a history of that with the magazine. So that the free reign, the artistic free reign I had to be able to just draw little gags in the back of panels was just fantastic, and they liked it, and that was great. In animation, I haven't really been in a position like that to pitch anything, but I will say that on one of the last jobs, our cartoon president, that was for late night cartoons, the first season that I was there, I was very excited. We were working out of the Ed Sullivan Theater. Stephen Colbert is producing. We're all working in the same building, so that was really cool. And I'm sitting in a little office. I'm working on the boards on the first episode I'm working on, and then they come around and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna have a table read for the episode that you're working on. Do you want to sit in on the table read? It might help you with the boards." Oh, okay, that's great. So I go into the meeting. Tons of people around. The voice actors are there. They're doing the table read live. The writers are there. The other storyboard artists, the directors. And then Colbert came in and he joined the meeting. And I was like, I'm in a meeting with Stephen Colbert. Oh my God, this is amazing. And he's like sitting 2 seats away from me. And the whole time I'm just thinking, oh, wow, I'm in a meeting with Stephen Colbert. This is cool. So they run through the script, they read it, and they had a gag in the cartoon that came up in the table read about how Trump was getting off of Air Force One and he trips and he falls down the stairs. And so at the end of the table read, they open it up to the room and they said, we want to hear feedback. What jokes worked, what didn't. So this was an opportunity to put my 2 cents in as to what I thought. Didn't know if it was my place, but they asked. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I told them the joke with Trump falling down the stairs, as much as I would love to see that and even draw that, I didn't think it worked too well because that was a joke that would be more directed toward another former president before your time, Gerald Ford, who was kind of known for falling down the stairs. So I was like, yeah, I just don't, that joke didn't work too well for me. And then all of a sudden I hear to the next to me, this voice saying, well, the reason we put this joke in, and it's Colbert who's defending the joke. This must have been his joke that he put in. I'm like, I'm screwed. I just, like, this guy's got his name on the side of the building, and I just criticized his joke. But he was like, he just defended it about like how they think Trump would be afraid of stairs, and he's so lazy, he doesn't know how to walk downstairs. He was very nice about it. But I kept thinking I was going to get fired. And then like the next day, one of the directors came to me and was like, oh, by the way, they took that joke out about the stairs because the network didn't like it either. So I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'm not fired.
Well, that's pretty funny. So I guess since you were talking about Mad, what's different about working with Mad and working at like Titmouse? What's different about that? Oh, Ray.
Well, again, like for the print for Mad, we had this artistic freedom to do a lot. When you're working for a studio like Titmouse, there's a particular show that you need to. You don't have to necessarily stay on model, especially working on boards, but it's less your artistic vision and someone else's, and you're part of a bigger team. When you're working at Mad, it eventually goes through other people, but you're the primary artist who's doing the penciling and the inking. Working on any show for an animation studio, you're part of a chain of a team that you need to keep in mind. There's certain places, certain studios might encourage individuality, but like you can't go too far off script and not really follow what they want you to do for these scenes and for these particular shows. So you have to be much more of a team player, let's say, working in more of a studio than like something like Mad, where you're allowed to be a little mad.
Can I just say how jealous I am of Ray? He got to work for Mad Magazine. That is so cool.
One of the best parts about working for Mad is they paid on the spot, which I wasn't prepared for. When
I write you a check,
I handed. I was here physically in the city where they were, and I dropped off the first job, and I'm used to like 3 months later getting a check in the mail. And yeah, they just like, he took a check out of the drawer and he handed it to me. And that was like, for a freelancer to like get paid so quickly. Oh, that's heaven.
So cool.
My brother, like during the final years of Mad, my parents got him a subscription. So like every couple of months or so, we would get one in the mail. They were pretty good.
Yeah.
It's always the best when you're like 12 years old.
Yeah. I couldn't get my kids into it, but I got like the collection, and I even have an original Don Martin page.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, it's a prelim, but it's still, it's pretty cool. But I would literally pay money to get a chance to like let me pay to do artwork for Mad. That would be so cool.
Well, I mean the fact that you got to draw Spider-Man too. I mean, how cool! Just like
Yeah.
that, like, and that artistic challenge of that character, on the page because I could imagine the freedom you must have had with the poses.
Yeah. I mean, it was intense. Changing your whole thinking, your entire life wanting to draw it, and then saying do it in CGI. And no one had really, I think there was like an Iron Man and a Batman, like really, really, rudimentary 3D done comics. But other than that, that was it. And so I spent 10 months on it, just 10 months of just inventing the wheel for this, and by the time I got towards the end, I mean, there's some pages that I'm just so happy with, but I would say 90% of the pages just don't hold up. You look at it and you're like, oh God, this was so bad. But I was pushing the technology. This was 2001, came out with the Tobey Maguire movie in 2002, but it was still, I had to train my brain to be satisfied, to be content with the fact that I got to fulfill my childhood dream, even though it wasn't how I envisioned it. And so that was something that let me be happy, because otherwise, I would but I didn't get to draw it. That's because I would always say, well, it's not art because I'm not drawing it. Like there's no word, it's not art. But it was like, no, this is my one chance. I got a chance that so many artists didn't get. I got to make sure that I'm content with this, that I'm satisfied with this. And so I made sure that I put every ounce of skill that I could into it, and whatever it is, I'll look back on it 20 more years from now. I think we're coming up next year. Will be 20 years since I did it.
Wow.
And I know just every time I look back at it, I'm like, oh my gosh. But no matter what, I'm always going to just try to be thankful for the opportunity, because it was just an amazing opportunity.
If I could ask a question, I don't want to step on the student moderators, because I'm curious, and this speaks into kind of what I was alluding to a little earlier about some of the main differences between the page and the screen. So Scott, did you have, so you went from animation to comics. Did you have film classes before you started in animation?
No, when my first introduction to animation outside of video games, because I was doing pixel art really, for, like I said, Sega Genesis games, and then I dabbled a little in 3D, just as like a test. I was kind of thrown in. It was in Toluca Lake, in Burbank area, and they were hiring for the next Casper movie, and I had no knowledge of the software. I had no knowledge of character animation, of acting, or anything. And I remember I had one day to prove that I was worth them giving me a chance. And so I was asking the guy next to me, how do you set a keyframe? How do I move the arm? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I was just getting Casper to just fly across the screen. And the thing that kept coming to me, the only thing that I was able to use was how to draw comics the Marvel way. And I remember they would say, it was, this is a good pose. This is a good pose, but not this, not halfway.
Uh-huh.
And so I was just like, okay, so I'll do all of the good poses. I'll do all of those, and then let the computer interpolate the in between. So don't set that middle pose, just set the extreme poses. And this is my first day animating. I have no training whatsoever. And it was good enough for me to get the job. For the next 2 weeks, I crunched watching, I think there was only 2 or 3 Pixar movies at the time. I think Bug's Life had just come out. This was in the 90s. And so I was really into Bugs Life, and I was looking at how fast their animation was, because my first animation of a ghost was like this, it was just really just kind of going across the screen. And I was looking at everybody else's animation. It was really kind of slow. And I was like, man, these characters are moving from here to here to this. And so I was taking a crash course in it. And in 2 weeks, I was a lead animator of Stretch.
Wow.
And it wasn't
fantastic.
because I was good at that. It was because the pool in the early 90s or the mid 90s was for computer animation was mostly engineers, because artists didn't know how to use 3D software at the time. Any of them that did were already out in Pixar, working for big. But other than that, the rest of us in LA, it was mostly engineers. So because I had some technical skills, I was able to apply the drawing skills. And yeah, I would never hold up to the animators of today. The kids today who are being taught, how to animate, and the software that they're using is so much more advanced, and their skills are so much more advanced. I was just at the right place at the right time.
So for me, one of the big challenges to go from print to motion to film was the 180-degree rule.
Yeah.
Was a huge pain in the ass, because it's not something that you really need in sequential art. On a comic book page, it's kind of okay to make that flip, because you're seeing the whole page. It's not as startling. Do you guys know what that is, the 180-degree rule?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. The cartooning students might. So
So just to explain to the viewers, the 180-degree rule is like, okay, you have one character on this side and the other character maybe it's like this. So the frame is like that. And with the camera, you're seeing this character closer and this character further. So with the 180-degree rule, you can't swap them all of a sudden, because it's too jarring for the camera. Because you're looking at them here, and then suddenly you're moving them on the totally opposite ends, and that cannot happen in animation.
Yeah, that's it. And it's fairly simple, and like I said, on a comic book page, if you go from one panel to the next panel and make that flip, it's not that startling, because you're already seeing the whole page. You can see both panels, you see what's ahead of you. But yeah, the jarringness of having those flipped all of a sudden. And I early on, I kept messing that up, because I kept thinking like a comic book artist and not like an animator, not like that what I was drawing was going to be for film. So that took a little bit getting used to.
That's really interesting. You guys both kind of already answered my question, but I guess, what other sort of skills did you take from cartooning and you were able to transfer like successfully into animation, and like what skills did you have to really learn for animation as well? Yeah. That's it.
Oh, okay. You're spotlighting me. I was hoping Ray would take this one first.
Okay. Well, just so as an instructor at the School of Visual Arts, teaching gesture drawing, which, Scott, by the way, I rely heavily still on How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Like that's for gesture drawing. That's a wonderful resource for trying to push my students to be more dynamic in their drawings. And it's a life drawing class. Pre-pandemic was actually in person with a model, drawing on paper with pencils. We did it Zoom over the last 2 semesters, which was not easy, but we managed. But I found it challenging to try to impart on the students the importance of this basic skill and just basic drawing skills and drawing on paper. And I would occasionally hear, well, everything's digital now. We're going to be drawing on tablets. Why do we really have to be that good at drawing on paper? And I'm just like, well, because if you have the basic skills, if you're good at drawing, if you're good at composition, if you're good at design, you'll be able to work. You'll probably be able to work anywhere, because you don't know where you might end up working. Like as my history and Scott's history a little bit too, where you might start in one area and just find your journey takes you through all these other areas. But if you're just good at the basics you'll be able to apply it to a lot of different areas. And it's really important to know how to draw the figure well, to be able to draw on paper with pencil, to be able to draw dynamically, and those skills are just going to serve you the whole rest of your career. And just other particular skills that I was able to bring with me, especially working in animation, was this. I found it helpful that I played football in high school, because it was like this. I realized I was relying on this team mentality to try to take us forward. I found myself, like, at one point early on at working at Animation Collective, I was an assistant director, and I found myself kind of being like a coach. I mean, I wasn't like mean, but it was just this sense of being organized and just trying to motivate my team to get everything done. So skills like that might end up coming into play.
I was going to ask that question for someone, but
Scott, do you want to still answer?
Have you come across any animator who is self-taught? I mean, I am. I've never had an animation class. I've never had a film class. I've never had a screenwriting class. Yeah, I mean, I think most everything I do is self-taught, and my art school gave me the foundation, and I think that's what Ray was kind of getting at, is you need that foundation. I have done video games. I've written books. I've animated TV shows, movies. I've written screenplays. I've produced. I've directed. I've done album covers. I've done movie posters. I've done CCG game cards. Everything, and it's all because I had that foundation in drawing and design, and so I know it's not as interesting in school right now as being in the thick of it, but I've been able to do 20 different careers, and I'm 52. I've been able to do 20 different careers now because I had the foundation, and that foundation carried me through all of this. It's as simple as this. Say you wanted a career where you were a screenwriter, a novelist, a journalist, and you didn't know how to read, and you didn't know how to write. So you still need that foundation, and that foundation is not going to guarantee you that position, but you can't be a novelist. You can't without knowing how to read or write. And so the same thing, if you can draw, if you can, I think especially what helped, other than how to draw comics the Marvel way, what helped me with my animation when I got into animation was in art school, we had to do 3 hours a day of figure drawing, clothed and nude. And I think spending so much time studying the human form from every position, every body shape, in different clothing and whatnot, absolutely helped me. It helped me. It taught me how to look at everything. It taught me how to study. It taught me how to observe. And as artists, we're observers. We're just mirrors, showing people how we see the world. And whether it's through animation, whether it's through illustration, whether it's through writing or music or whatever, we're just showing people our interpretation of the world around us. And if we can't be taught to, if we can't be bothered to learn how to look at the world and how to study it, then we're never really going to truly know it. You're just trying to. I mean, and I see this a lot with young kids, and same my generation too. But I see like, well, I really like anime, or I really like Simpsons style, and so I'm just going to draw everything in that particular style. Well, you're just copying a particular style, but you're not looking at the foundation of whoever came up with that style, where they got that from. And you're always just going to be someone who copies a style rather than creates a style based on many styles and the way that you see the world. So, I mean, I carry a sketchbook with me everywhere, and I draw cars, I draw buildings, I draw people, I draw everything. It's not just people, because there's artists who only can draw people in a particular style. learn to see the world. Consider yourself like a photographer, you know, and you're just, I always say, just keep a journal, just keep a sketchbook and fill sketchbooks up, you know, fill up hundreds of sketchbooks, and just, you'll see your improvement. You'll see how much you improve over the years. So yeah, you can be a self-taught animator, but you need to have those basic skills.
Yeah, I agree. When I was a student at SVA in the mid to late '80s, there were a couple of mantras that were common that you would hear at school: "Jack of all trades, master of none." So they really encourage people to focus and find one thing to be great at. And maybe I graduated in 1987. Maybe back then you could have, but like Scott's saying, and like what I'm saying is, like, you need to be open to a lot of different things, because you don't know where, like I illustrated for years and I loved it, and I didn't anticipate that print was going to die someday, and have to find another career. And so if you're good, if you're an artist, you can make these shifts as long as you're drawing. You're a success. Like, it might not be where you envisioned, but it's somewhere, and it's art, and if you're not selling your soul, it'll do you good. So yeah, be open to almost anything.
So building off of the points of being really flexible and applying your skills everywhere, you guys have had a lot of experience in working in the fields that, not just cartooning, but also animation and everything in between. So kind of just to round it off, what would you have told your younger self? What would you have decided to do instead, like in the past? What would you tell your younger self? Oh, this is, what would you say? To
improve my current situation, or something that I wouldn't have anticipated?
Maybe like advice to your younger self in a sense. Yeah. Like, what would you give? Like, what tips would you give to a younger self in a sense?
Or maybe tips to the next generation, for that matter.
I don't. I think it's basically been covered. I'm not sure if there's anything else specifically. Like I said, I mean, I was unaware that how things were going to change so rapidly in media. And it's, it was like how Scott mentioned, he never took any animation classes. I had an animation class when I was at SVA. I love the art of animation, and I had an animation class, but back then it was on paper and you're flipping the pages on a light box. And I did that and I hated it. It was just so tedious. And so I'm like, I like animation, but I'm not going to be an animator. And I didn't even really think about the possibility of storyboards. That wasn't anything that occurred to me. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's anything I could have told my younger self to make anything better these days, aside from maybe like investing in like Apple early on or that kind of thing. But in terms of like my artistic journey, it happened the way it happened. I don't think it would have happened anyway else. I will like. There are aspects about being an artist that I didn't anticipate that are kind of incredible. So just to go off on a slight tangent, and I won't take too long, because it seems like we're getting close to the end here, is one of the things I've ended up doing is volunteer work as an artist, which kind of goes against something where like you should never do anything for free. When people ask you to do stuff for free, do it on spec. Yeah, you don't want to avoid that. But if there's opportunities to do volunteer work to make people's lives happy with your art, that's a slightly different story. So I belong to a group called the Inkwell Foundation, where it's cartoonists and animators here in New York and LA, where we volunteer and we go and draw for children at hospitals. And that's very rewarding and
that's amazing.
It's just, because like we work in isolation so much. Like when you're not at an animation studio, especially when you're freelancing, you work at home, you're alone, you send your files in, you don't get any feedback, you don't see the reaction except maybe an email from a director saying, good job, here's the next scene. But when you're sitting in a hospital room and you're drawing for a kid, and for them it's magic. They see Spider-Man developing on the page, and that's a really good feeling. So I do recommend for anybody who ends up working professionally to seek out avenues if you have the time to do volunteer work, because it'll feed your soul as an artist. And another aspect of the volunteering that I wasn't anticipating was I belong to the National Cartoonist Society, which was created in the 1940s after professional cartoonists went and drew for troops in World War II. And they met overseas as part of the USO, drawing for the troops. And again, most cartoonists had worked individually, didn't really get to meet too often, but they all met on these trips. And when they came back, they're like, oh, that was fun seeing each other, aside from the war. Let's create an organization where we could do this more frequently. So I've become a member of the National Cartoonist Society. So a few years back, the NCS decided that since our roots were founded with the USO, we would get involved in that again. So I received an invitation to be part of a group of cartoonists to go on a USO tour. And I said yes, because even though I'm a pacifist, I'm opposed to war, I still felt bad for our troops. I wanted to do something for the troops. Next thing I know, I'm going to Iraq and Afghanistan.
Holy crap!
Actually, on the way to Afghanistan on that trip, we stopped in Kyrgyzstan, and we landed at a military base in the middle of the night, and it's pitch black dark. And then the next day, we were going to take another military flight actually into Afghanistan. So we landed. I didn't get to see what was around. We went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning. We were getting breakfast, and I walk out of this cabin, and I look up, and the Himalayan mountains are there, and it took up the whole sky.
Wow!
And I'm just like, I'm in Kyrgyzstan, and I'm looking at the Himalayas, and I'm like, cartooning brought me here. I would never be here if I wasn't a cartoonist. And it's like, this is so weird. So, and that was amazing. That was so you just never know where these things are going to take you or what you're going to end up having to do. Hopefully not war zones for most of you. I don't recommend that, but volunteer work and the people you get to meet and the things you get to draw, the things you have to learn about for what you have to draw. I don't like basketball or golf, but have had to learn those specifics of those things for drawings I've had to do. So it makes your life very rich in these careers that we've chosen.
That's so cool. I would often think about if I could go back and tell my younger self anything. But I wouldn't want to change anything. I mean, I've had such an interesting career and everything kind of led to the next thing. So I wouldn't want to break the chain. I'm much better painter and an illustrator now that I know I could have got that job doing Spider-Man, earlier painting, but then I would not have been directing Sylvester Stallone and Emily Blunt and John Krasinski in a movie because I wouldn't have gotten into animation. So it's like, it's tough. You don't know what you're going to do. The one thing I will say is no matter what you do, make sure you put your entire heart and soul into it, because otherwise you'll always regret not trying hard enough. And that's why I say I can look back on Spider-Man, which are, there's no one talking about Spider-Man Quality of Life, the four issue series I did back in 2002. No one's, hailing it as a masterpiece. It doesn't come up in anybody's, must read list. But I can look back on that and say, I gave it everything for 10 months. I poured everything into it. I left everything on the field, as they say. And so I'll never regret not giving it everything, and so the same thing with Animal Crackers. Animal Crackers didn't get nominated for an Academy Award or anything like that. but I poured everything into it, and I enjoyed every moment of it. Not everything is a success or a failure. As artists, we fail every day. But it is an experience. And just like Ray's, trip to Kazakhstan, no,
Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan, these are experiences that you can look back on that make you who you are later on in life. And so it doesn't matter if you're working in comics. It doesn't matter if you're working for the local newspaper doing, comic strips, or you're doing. This is the people who go to the trial, the trials, and they do the artwork and whatnot. The reporters, whatever it may be, is going to be an experience. It's going to be something that's going to stick with you. And so if you put everything into it, you're going to get more out of it. If you just blow it off and you just go, this isn't real. Had I done that with the job at Sega or the job at Atari or working on Casper, because all I really wanted to do was Spider-Man, I wouldn't be here. But because every time I had that opportunity to make art, even if it wasn't the art I wanted to do, even if it wasn't in the style I wanted to do it in, I gave it everything. I learned something from it, and I was able to carry that towards eventually getting to do what I wanted to do. And so that, I wouldn't go back and tell myself, but I would tell anybody else who would want to do
that. That's really those are really great answers. I think we're closing up soon. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it. Are there any final questions that any of you two want to ask, or?
Not. Yeah, I don't really have any more questions to ask. I feel like I got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned a lot. This was really great.
Well, I really like meeting you all, and Ray, it was really nice to meet you. Hopefully, next time I'm in New York, we can get together.
Where do you live now?
I'm in a hobbit hole.
I was gonna say, whoa! Like, is that the thing? Keep scrolling the other.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, nice.
But no, I'm in Franklin, Tennessee, near Nashville. So there's a better chance of me coming to you than you coming to me.
Okay.
But
yes,
yeah,
if you're in New York, because the National Cartoonist Society has a Manhattan chapter. They pre-pandemic meet once a month for drinks in Manhattan. And that's something else too. Like aside from the volunteering aspect for future animators and artists, is just to get involved, like find whatever organizations there are for your career. National Cartoonist Society, there's a CIFA for animation, the Animation Union, those kind of things. Because it's what's amazing too is how networking leads to work. That an aspect that wasn't really much of an issue as an illustrator. Everything was your portfolio. You would bring your portfolio, and you got kind of hired based on that. But animation, I found, is very much, who can recommend you. Because if you have a good reputation as a solid part of a team, who meets your deadlines, and the people you worked with are going to remember that, and they're going to recommend you for other jobs. So the socialization, the networking is really important. So Scott, yes, when you're in New York, let me know.
You got it. Well, thank you, everybody.
Well, I can't thank you guys enough for all you guys sharing your stories and sharing your experiences. That it really was really insightful, and really it was such an honor to speak with both of you.
So here we are. We're going to do a quick little, again, just a little slideshow and discuss why we're doing what we're doing. So I'll get it started. And
it's been such an amazing weekend. The professionals that we've met through Fanfare have been extraordinary. They gave their time, and they made it possible to interact with our amazing students. This is a fundraiser, though. And so we really want to make sure that people who have enjoyed this content all weekend are really going through and making a donation to help our students. Our students are the best of the best. They are from every part of New York City, from the Bronx to Staten Island to Brooklyn, Queens, and they come to school in the heart of Manhattan. And they need our help. They need our help to get art supplies. That's a big, need that you don't think about. Everyone is not working digitally. And if they are working digitally, they need the next Wacom tablet, or they need the next application. And that's what the PTA funding can give to them. Oh, there's John. Hi, John.
Hello.
John.
Sorry about that.
That's all
it's
right.
okay.
I'm so excited you were having a great time with the cosplayers.
Oh, they were so much fun. We could have talked for another 2 hours. It would have been great.
And what was great too was one of those cosplayers was an alumni, and
Yes.
she was talking about how much the school meant to her and her ambitions. She is now a working illustrator in working with Nickelodeon on a project, I think, also working
Netflix.
Netflix. Thank you.
Yep.
And so that's the kind of student, these ambitious students who want to work in the creative field. This is a great slide showing some items and what you can provide if you can donate today. A studio easel is something that any artist who works on canvas can use.
The illustration folks,
That is expensive, and we would love to be able to provide that. And so, could you make a donation today of $125?
We have our guests here are going to be talking about comics, and there's like India ink, this special, the pens, there are all these little accoutrements that they all need in order to get the job done. So,
and you don't buy it once. I mean, you buy the easel once, but ink, paint, paper, you go through it. If you're in school and you have to be constantly creating, you're going through it, and so it's a constant need. And we want to be there for our students, the PTA.
You had a great story. I don't want you to.
Oh, yes. Well, I met with an illustrator, or it was an aspiring cartoonist. But he's in 9th grade. He's amazing. He was showing me an ink drawing, and it was this elaborate ink drawing with all this cross-hatching and everything on it. And he said, I couldn't finish it the way I wanted it to because I ran out of ink in this ink pen, which was like a special ink pen. And I just thought, wow, if that isn't a metaphor for what we're doing, let's keep that ink flowing. Let's let him realize the beautiful creation he was making, and let him be, the next cartooning star. And you can do it.
Yeah. As we were saying, even $1 helps. So anything helps. John, this is here. We rack this up. It's time for that radio voice.
Here we go, guys. If you can, please donate to fanfarenyc.com, or you can go and donate through a text message, because we're super savvy like that. You can text FFNYC to 44-321. Give us all the money, everything you got in your wallet. Go through your kids' piggy banks. They don't need it yet. When they go to the High School of Art and Design, then they can save up. But for now, give us what you got.
Yes. Go ahead.
I think there was one more slide that we were going to just talk about merchandise, because John had a T-shirt on that was very special the last few days. I think you had to wash it now. I understand.
That's funny. I actually did. I was like, I can't do it.
It was like the smellometer. There was no, you couldn't do it. But
2 days I had it.
But we know people are such fans of Fanfare, and we have some merchandise with our mascot on it, which was created by one of our students, Lang Mansunu. And I just want to make sure that everyone who wants to could buy it. It's on our website, fanfarenyc.com, and go there, buy whatever. They're great. I have a T-shirt. I'm excited. My daughter has a sweatshirt.
There's the mascot up in the top
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
so the all this merchandise is available through tomorrow, but then it's not available. So please do go and get yours today.
There's a gate. You gotta
Yeah.
get there before the gate closes. And
Exactly.
then we do want it's still, if you go and you donate, certain amounts get you some of these merchandise too. Am I not right? I'm sorry.
No,
if
you're
I'm-
right. You're
Yes.
right. I think it is, if you donate $125, we will give you one of these awesome tote bags.
Look at that.
We also have little limited edition button packs. If you donate $50, we will give you a limited edition button pack. We don't have this pictured because it's not for sale. That's a special gift just for our friends who donate more than $50.
Mhm.
And if you donate $1,000, Joanne, myself, and Miguel will come to your house.
Oh, I thought you were
I-
going to throw in that dog.
Yeah.
and the dog.
And the dog.
We're just giving stuff away.
Right.
Time, bodies.
We'll do it. I'll get on the call and talk to you. Talk you through that, writing that $1,000 check or making that donation. But
Talk
One
you
more
through it.
zero.
thank you.
One more
That's
zero.
right. Exactly.
good.
Right.
Exactly. Thanks.